Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I'm here with Samong, and it is another Tuesday and time to talk hunting, but a little bit different this week. We're talking hunting still, but we're going to be talking cold weather prep and how to make sure that you can have a fun and safe hunt in this late season that is really coming up on us quick. But before we jump into that, we got to thank our sponsors for this podcast. These are companies that we partner with that we are thrilled to work with. First one, we have Reveal. These are cell cameras made by Tacticam. Awesome cameras. I have cameras that I have with solar panels out for coming up on 2.5 years now, and they are still sending photos very regularly to my phone. You can save a lot of resources on batteries and gas and time going out and checking cameras and buggering places up. So just really awesome products.
Another one is Vortex Optics. You can buy Vortex Optics products almost anywhere, but if you shop at eurooptic.com, you can use code SY10 and it will save you some cash on all Vortex products. So binoculars, rangefinders, rifle scopes, doesn't matter. If it's a Vortex product, it will save you some cash. And we just want to express our gratitude for them because they've been with me through thick and thin and from the start.
And third, we want to thank Onyx Hunt. This is just a great online mapping software, desktop, mobile. They've got offline maps. One tool that we've been using a lot this season, or that I've been using a lot this season, is under their compass. They've got a little toolbar, and you can open up a compass mode. And under that compass mode, they've got the rangefinder tool, which you basically just point your phone to wherever you're ranging, and you can scroll out a bar to that exact range, and it really helps drop accurate pins on the map. This is really great when you're planning a stalk or trying to recover an animal.
That's right.
But with that being said, we're going to jump into this week's topic of cold weather prep. But before we do that, it is time for Trivia Duel.
That's right. So with that said, here's my question for you. What is the purpose of a snortwheeze made by deer?
So I have a question.
Yep.
This is before I answer. I know bucks make snortwheezes.
Mm-hmm.
Do does make them as well?
No.
Okay.
So I guess for the people who may not be familiar, here's what a snortwheeze is in general. So I'm asking you what the significance or what the meaning of it is, but this is just what it is. So a snortwheeze is a series of snorts followed by a super long or drawn out wheezing sound. And this is just created by like expelling air through like pinched nostrils in a way.
I'm going to guess that because most of the time when I've heard these, or most of the time these are during the rut, like I don't hear them snort wheezing in the summer. So I'm going to guess that it has to do with when a buck is around a doe or a hot doe, that it's a sound of dominance, like that it's claiming that area. That's my idea, because we will snort wheeze with a call to bring other deer in to like check us out or like come in aggressively. So that's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I will classify your answer as right. So during the time, this is, I'll break it down. So it is most commonly used by deer, especially mainly whitetail bucks. You know, I guess deer in general, bucks in general. Mm-hmm. It is most commonly used during the rutting season, which is when bucks are in competition. So the actual meaning of a snortwheeze is aggression, dominance, as you said. And so this is basically a buck saying, this is my territory, and don't bother me. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a sign to let other bucks know. And the reason why it's effective as a calling tactic is because when all these bucks out there are just pumped full of testosterone, they all think they're the biggest, baddest buck on the mountain. Mm-hmm. And so when you challenge them, especially if you challenge a big, mature buck in his very own home, he's going to come check you out. Because he's like, who's this new kid challenging me in my own playground? Mm-hmm. So with that said, with late season, put that in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Snort wheezing can be pretty effective. I mean, there's a lot of YouTube videos showing that.
Yeah, and you can actually make the sound without, I'm not going to do it for you guys and bless you with that sound, but you can do it without an actual call. And so it's always something you can keep in your back pocket.
Exactly. So you can use some of the older school like grunt tubes.
Mm-hmm.
They have this little second tube on top where it's just like a hollow tube,
Yep.
and that's for you using a snort wheezing type of sound. So
very interesting. Also, in the spirit of late season, kind of, how cold is the coldest temperature ever recorded in Washington State? Is it A, negative 29 Fahrenheit, B, negative 37 Fahrenheit, C, negative 48 Fahrenheit, or D, negative 51 Fahrenheit?
in Washington in general,
Coldest temperature ever recorded in Washington.
my question is, where do they record these temperatures?
It's any spot in Washington. Just
Okay, so-
Washington State, the lowest. And I'll tell you, this was in Mazama in 1968, which, for those of you who aren't super familiar with Washington geography, the Okanagan Valley is like central northern Washington, and Mazama is right up there in central Washington, just a little bit north of central.
it's kind of just like at the
It's kind of
foothills of the Cascades.
yeah, it's at the west. It's at the east side of the North Cascades.
So this is recorded in Mazama, because I would assume if you go up to a mountain peak, it would be way colder.
Yeah, so it would have to be somewhere with a weather station.
That's why I was asking, because I was like, if you're just talking about coldest in general, it'd probably be like a glacier peak or something.
Yeah.
But all right, to answer your question, what were my options again?
29. So these are all
Negatives.
Negatives. Yeah. So 29 Fahrenheit, negative 29, negative 37, negative 48, negative 51.
29, 37, 48, 51. I'm going to say negative 48.
That's right.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. That was a guess.
Yeah. So that it reached negative 48 in 1968 in Mazama.
You know what day it was?
December 30th.
Oh,
Yeah.
December 30th. I wonder how much snow they got that year.
I don't know.
What year is it?
68.
68. So on that side note, what I do know is during those late 60s, those were some of the years where Washington got hit by some of the hardest winters.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of old-time hunters say that when those winters hit, the animal populations, especially the mule deer, got hit so hard they never rebounded back to normal. So up here in Northeast Washington, up in the Selkirks, right, we have this wilderness called the Samuel Priest. A lot of old-time hunters were like, dude, when you went up there, it was just like 200-inch bucks everywhere you looked. And when those, I think it was the winter of 69, hit, and they were like, those deer just never rebounded.
Yeah.
And today, you go up there, it's pretty desolate. Like, it's pretty sorry to like see like what it used to be back then and what it is today.
Yeah, especially with mule deer because they're so much slower to rebound than whitetail.
Yeah, whitetails are pretty resilient. I mean, like this year, 2025, I think we had a pretty brutal EHD outbreak with whitetails. Like some people were finding like in a small piece of property, like 5 different whitetail bucks just dead at the creek bottoms, right? And the thing about EHD is like it's pretty, I think it's like area specific. It's not like the whole region gets hit. It's like certain pockets of deer that get hit. But even with that, like these whitetails, they just seem to, respond to that so much better. Give them like a couple years and they're just kind of back to normal. But mule deer, man, they just have a really hard time recovering from, bad winters or, some disease outbreak like that. With that out of the way, we're going to jump into a story of Colin's buck last year that we hunted in the late season. And even though we're talking about the whitetail deer hunt in and of itself, it's not the focus. The focus is we're using that story as an example to give the points that we will make later on in this podcast the merit that it deserves. Because even though Colin killed a deer, there were so many external factors that really just made that hunt brutal and honestly dangerous. So with that said, we're going to jump into the story. And then after the story is over, we will go through and dissect the things that we did on that hunt and just some of the things that we should have done differently and some of the tips and tactics that we now undergo to make sure that we have a safe hunt.
Absolutely.
This was actually Colin's second year doing whitetail. And Colin and Jason, growing up in the Northwest Oregon area, like they're primarily blacktail. And in Oregon itself, you don't really get whitetail opportunities.
No.
It's a lot of just blacktails on the West Coast and then mule deer in the east side of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So whitetails was just kind of this animal to them where it's like, that's the animal we want to pursue because we don't get the opportunity.
Yep.
Whereas for us, where we grew up here, it's kind of like, it's just a white-tailed deer, right? You kind of just take it for granted. But for them, they really wanted a white-tailed deer. So 2 years ago, they came up. Colin did not get to shoot a deer. I mean, we had an opportunity at a little 3x3 and whatnot, but he just gave us the slip. And so he came back last year, second year, and we had spent, he had 5 days to dedicate to this hunt. And the first 2 days or so, it was just foggy and rainy and eventually like really sunny. It was just a mix of all the weather you can get. And we saw, I don't know, probably like 80 does and one forky. And the forky was on private, right? And so we came back over here. And again, last year, we could still hunt Hancock or a lot more property than we can today. And so Nate was eventually off work, and Nate had a few days to go and, spend time to hunt. And so Nate, he's been after this one buck that you may have heard us many times before talking the podcast.
May have absolutely heard us talk about, yeah.
And so Nate's been really set on this one buck we call Octo up in this little basin. And so there's basically with that spot, there's two main ways you can enter to get into that basin. There's basically you come in from the bottom or you come in from up over and top. And so that day, I think this was like day 3 or something, Nate was off. So Nate's like, I'm going to go in from the bottom side. And because with Nate, how he had wanted to do it, it seems like you had a spot in mind to go in glass where you think Octo was going to show up.
Yeah, in this basin, I'll preface by saying this hunt is something every year. It's the first, I still work, I guess you could call it your 9 to 5. I work at the hospital. And every year when our time off requests come up to date, these are the dates I put out before any other hunt, no matter what, every single year. Just because this is, to me, the most enjoyable hunt of the year, I think, for many factors, which we'll talk about. But this particular day, last year, I had a couple run-ins with Octo in early season, and the spot that I wanted to get to was to glass him. And so I actually walked from the bottom access and covered, it's about 3 miles up to this glassing point into this basin through some really good whitetail country. But because I wanted to be there at first light, I hiked through all of that other stuff in the dark. So I could be up there and be at this spot to glass for first light. And it was actually really funny this morning that I was hiking in there. It was probably still an hour and a half before first light. I wanted to get up there way early. I was hiking in, and then maybe an hour before first light, it was pretty dark out still, but just enough moonlight and starlight that I could hike on this road without my headlamp. And I was getting close, and I hear from me to you, like arm's distance away, because I'm hiking on the edge of the road, this crash. And I'm like, I freeze, and I'm hiking on a road cut, right? So I'm hiking in the left side of the road goes uphill, and the right side of the road goes pretty steep downhill. And so I look to my left, and I look uphill, and I look almost straight up, and I just see these one pair of eyes, these two eyes just looking right, like down at the top of my head. And I draw my pistol and back up and grab my headlamp and turn it on. And it was a cow moose.
Oh.
And she was so close to me. I mean, like standing, because it's such a steep road cut, like standing over me. And we've talked about it in the past, but of all of the things out there, cow moose are near the top of my list of things I don't want to run into out there, especially in the dark. But luckily for me, she was also startled of me and trotted away. But that's how my day started with I was sleepy and it was cold and I was just kind of hiking and a little cold, and all of a sudden I was very awake and very alert.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I hike in. I had accessed from this bottom area. This was my first day of late season hunting. I think this, like you said, this was your guys' third day of late season hunting, and you guys decided to access from the top. There was not any snow on the ground.
Not yet.
Not yet. The top access becomes unable. You can't access the top access once there's any amount of snow because the road's pretty gnarly and it's a lot higher elevation, and so it becomes off the table once there's snow.
It's extremely sketchy.
Yeah, and so this day was expecting a little bit of rain, but still no snow. So you guys were like, well, we'll hop in from the top. We'll get a different glassing vantage, come in through a way that's not quite as popular. It's not as obvious on maps, things like that. And I said, well, it's perfect. I'm coming from the bottom. That way we can cover two different areas. We can glass from two different spots, and we'll just kind of keep in touch.
Yeah.
If there's anything out there.
Yeah. So you made it to your knob. I think you beat us there.
Yeah.
Because you had a much longer hike than we did because it's a trade-off. So you come in from the bottom. It's a farther hike, but you're just walking in on a road. Mm-hmm. So you don't really battle obstacles. Coming in from up top, it's a shorter hike, but you're kind of bushwhacking your way down. Mm-hmm. And so the reason why we wanted to come up top is if you come in from up top, you don't really blow out the area. Because if you come in from the bottom, you're kind of walking through some quote-unquote spots that you might run into deer already. Yep. And so I was like, I don't want to risk blowing out anything. Let's come in from the top so that we just can oversee all the deer that might be unbothered. And so last year, we were still able to bait. And so Nate had this trail cam in his bait site up there. And so Nate's like, hey, if you don't mind, go throw a 50-pound bag of corn up there on my trail cam. So I strapped on a 50-pound bag of corn. And Colin, Jason, myself, and Wachong, we carpooled in my truck. We drove up there. And the first thing we do is, like, as soon as you drop down, your bait site's pretty up high. And so I drop off the bag of corn. The camera sends a picture to Nate, and Nate's like, thank you. I'm like, no problem. And so we drop down the ridge, and this is like it's a pretty overcast day because, again, the weather forecast was calling for rain, so like there were already clouds, and so it got light really, really slow this day. And so as we start dropping down, it starts raining. Like it really starts raining, and I tell Jason and Colin, like, hey, let's just get down here as fast as we can, and we'll hunker up, and we'll throw the tarp over, and we'll just oversee this little clear-cut ridge. And so Wachong actually splits up from us. He decided to stay up high. And so Colin, myself, and Jason, we work down, and we sit on this little, and just like off the side of this ridge, and we start glassing. And immediately, before we even like got our stuff out, I look out there, and there's already like deer all over the clear cut. And it's still so dark, like you can't really see, but from my best judgment, a lot of these were just does. Mm-hmm. And so I was telling Colin, like, just, you guys just do your thing. I need to get the tarp out, and I need to set up this tarp. And so we sit there for like 5 minutes, and it is dumping rain. And I get a text from Nate, and Nate's like, there's a little buck over here. I don't know if Colin has a certain standard, but if he just wants to shoot a little forky or whatever, you guys can come over here. So how it works is Nate's on his ridge, and we're kind of like offset like 5 o'clock from Nate. And then there's a ridge that we're kind of looking on, but Nate's looking on the left side of that ridge. We're looking on the right side of the ridge. Yeah,
so I'm glassing what for them is the back side of the ridge, and they're glassing for what for me is the back side of the ridge.
So we're looking at the same ridge, just different faces of the ridge. And this buck that Nate had spotted was on the other side of the ridge from us, from Colin and us. And Nate's like, well, he's just in the middle of a clear cut. Like he has a doe, and he's just kind of been chilling. Like he doesn't seem like he's going to move. And so Nate sends me a photo through the all-in. And so I show Colin. I'm like, oh, there's a little buck. I don't know if you want to go shoot him. And Colin, again, never having shot a whitetail deer before, like he was like, if he's a 3-point or like even just like a decent forky, like I'm not going to pass. Mm. So I show Colin, and he's like, all right, let's go. And so I'm like, all right, in that case, then I'm not going to set up the tarp. There's no point. So I repack all what little gear I had out, and basically, we weren't going to make a straight cut to Nate. We were going to have to do this massive loop to not blow out the area. So we were going to have to take a road, loop all the way to the road that Nate came in on, and then hike from behind, and then eventually go up to where Nate was sitting at that point. And so as we start going over there, like it is just raining, like it's dumping rain. And eventually we get up to where Nate is, and Nate's like, dude, this buck has been standing here for like an hour, and he hasn't moved.
No exaggeration. the deer, because I think it took you guys just under an hour to get to me, like 50 minutes.
Yep.
And in those 50 minutes, the buck did not take a single step. It was standing there in the rain with its head in one position, to the point where I was almost confused. I was like, I swear this deer was walking around. And what happens with the rain is it was raining so hard that glassing, you compress all of what you're looking at into one field of view. So all of the rain between me and this buck which was about 350 yards away. So you could barely see, and there would be fog that would come in and out. And at some points, you would just maybe be able to just see it barely an outline. And I was like, the buck's still there. Like, I see what I see, but it was not moving, which was really funny.
And then I think like 5 minutes before we showed up, Nate's like, oh, he took 2 steps to the right. And now he's like perfectly behind the tip of this pine tree. Because Nate was like, throughout the text, or as we were walking up, Nate was like, dude, he is so perfect. I could shoot this buck right now if I wanted to. Because you still had a tag.
Yeah.
Nate just opted to pass or handed it over to Colin. He's like, dude, this buck. So when we got up there, this buck was no longer in the open. He was just like, he was still in the open, but from our perspective, he was now behind this tree.
Mm-hmm.
And Nate's like, okay, I promise you guys, he was standing in the open until you guys literally showed up, and now he's blocked by this tree. And so I'm like, all right, well, he can't stay in there forever, right? Like, he's surely got to move 2 steps that way or 2 steps that way.
And the spot that we were from was kind of just above this road cut, and it was really thick. This was like a little window over to this hillside.
Yep.
So we did not have any freedom to move left or right to kind of move our trajectory to get him out from behind the tree.
And remember when we got to you and the buck was behind there, I was actually like, all right, stay here. I'm going to go see if I can find a different angle. So I actually was walking up and down the road, and there was just no way you could see into it. Like when you go down low, there was treetops that were blocking him. If you go up high, there was just like, it wasn't even trees. It was just this super tall brush, like just like moose willow in a way that was just blocking the view. So we literally had that one spot about a span of about 10 yards wide to actually shoot over some brush into that spot that buck was on. It just so happened that from that angle, he was perfectly blocked by this tree. Yeah. And so we were like, all right, we'll just wait out this buck. So we sit there, and I'm like, Colin, just get set up. Like, I'm sure like within like 5 minutes, he's going to move. And so Colin gets on the ground, and he's set up. And 5 minutes goes by, he's not moving. And at this point, it's really raining now. It's just getting heavier and heavier with rain. I am soaked. And another 5 minutes goes by, and I'm like, dude, there's no way we're going to sit out here in this rain. So I get the tarp out. And again, we're on the road. So like with the tarp, a lot of times you need some type of elevation to be able to use the tarp properly, where you can stake the tarp higher above your head and then stake it out with the trekking poles. Mm-hmm. But on the road, it's so flat, you can't really use it. So like me and Nate, we're like trying to use rocks, trying to use trekking poles to like really push the stake out and to really get this tarp to work. We did our best. It wasn't good. And like 30 minutes goes by, this buck still hasn't moved. And at this point, we're cold, wind's starting to pick up, and I am literally starting to shiver. This rain has now turned into snow. And not only has it turned into snow, but the snow is actually sticking. We're starting to lick this hillside that this buck is on, and it's starting to get white. And at this point, I'm like, we're freezing. Colin behind the gun I can tell he's cold. Like
he has not moved an inch. He's been like set up behind the scope. Like before we had the tarp up, when we set the tarp up, we're like, you just stay on the buck in case he moves. We'll set the tarp up over you.
Yeah.
And so he's down there, and so I think I slid him my my butt pad for him to put under his belly, because he was just like laying like soaked shirt.
Because on the road, it's not even a flat road. It's kind of angled. Mm-hmm. And so what we started having all this runoff, like water running down underneath Colin.
Yeah.
And Colin, because we were hiking up, he wasn't even wearing a puffy. He was wearing like a base layer, a mid layer, and then his rain jacket.
Yeah.
And I told Colin, I was like, dude, you might want to get your puffy out. Because he was like, I can't shoot this deer. Like, I can't feel this thing. I'm like, well, that's not good, because if he steps out, you cannot shoot him. So put your puffy on. But Colin, he is the most dedicated. When he's like, I have a deer, he will not get off that gun until he shoots that deer. And he's done it many times like that before.
Oh, yeah, he is.
And so
he's very stoic.
yes,
He's you will never know what's going on behind his eyes.
I know. And so I'm telling him like, hey, like I understand like what if he does move as soon as you get off the gun, but I was like at the same time, like you're literally like approaching hypothermia at this point. Like it's no joke. Like this was one of the coldest I have been on a hunt in a very long time. It's getting colder, we're getting wetter by the moment. And finally he gives in. He's like, I need my puffy. So he digs out his puffy, he gets back on the gun, and he's starting to warm up. And again, because I'm like always exposing myself to the rain and the snow at this point, I'm so drenched. Like I am drenched to the bone. My gloves were these puffy gloves. And so they're like the glassing mittens. And those things were soaked. And so when I put my hands in there, they were just cold. So I actually just got rid of them. And so now my hands are just completely exposed to the elements because it was actually better that way. And at this point, it's been like an hour of us just sitting in this snow, freezing, and this buck still hasn't taken a step. And his doe was actually like 10 yards above him. And we're like, dude, this buck's got to go to his doe at some point. And all throughout this, like, we can tell the buck or the deer, the doe and the buck were super alert because throughout the morning, Nate kept saying that he kept hearing like barking down in the valley or something. I think it was wolves.
Yeah, so this was my first day of hunting, but my next 3 days of hunting after that, I went 3 for 3 in that for those days. I went 3 days for 3 days having some sort of encounter with wolves.
So we think those wolves killed something down at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like barking over the carcass. And these two deer were just like focused down in the valley. And so I got to the point, an hour in, I'm soaked. And I'm like, guys, I'm going to go start a fire. And you have to understand everything is soaked. Like everything is damp. Because 2 days ago, before the storm came in, I took 2 hours before my fire was actually lit. Like I was constantly, like finding twigs, breaking twigs, and I used so many fire starters to get my fire from 2 days ago to even start. And this time, it's like, it's even wetter.
Mm-hmm.
It's the humidity conditions are even worse to get a fire to light. But I was like, I cannot do this anymore. Like I have no way of warming up. Like we're literally going to sit here and freeze to death. So I get out of the tarp and I start trying to create this fire. I go through 2 fire starters and nothing goes. And then all I hear Colin saying, oh, he's going. So I'm just thinking like, oh, he probably took 2 steps, right? And so Colin's like, hurry, he's running. And I'm like, what? And so I go over there, we scramble, get on this deer. And what happened was, I don't know what spooked the deer, but Colin just said, the doe just took off. Like the doe just ran away. Like no sign of like a trot, just like Colin again. He's been on his gun for basically like an hour 30 at this point, just looking at these deer through the scope. And he just says the doe just takes off out no warning. And the buck was starting to like follow suit. He had come up to where the doe was standing and he was probably going to follow her. And so Jason, who's also filming for them, gets them on the video. I get on the video. And again, through the camera, you can hardly see the deer. It's just dumping snow. And I ranged it. I think we were like 310 or something like that. And I'm like, Colin, if you have a shot, take him. And so Colin shoots, and I can't even really see. All I hear is impact. I hear that bullet thud. And I just see the deer like silhouetted in my camera screen take off to the bottom right or bottom left. And through the camera screen, I can kind of see you can kind of see the bullet impact where it kind of makes a ripple on the deer's body. But it's so snowy you can't really see. So he takes off. I tell Collins, like, you hit him. It sounds like a good hit. I don't really know. And so we get up. We don't see the deer anymore. We get up, and that's when it finally hits us, and we all start shivering. Mm-hmm. Because at this point, it's a mixture of buck fever. It's a mixture of you're just cold. And long story short, we regather ourselves. We start packing up, and we're like, we need to find Wachong because we don't know where he is. The dude doesn't have a walkie-talkie. He doesn't have service down in the valley, and he doesn't have a satellite phone. And so I'm like, if we're this cold, I have no idea what's happening to him. Like, I don't know if he's cold, if he's wet, or what's going on, because I know he's less prepared than us, and we're freezing. And so I get up top, and I text him, and luckily he was actually able to get my text, and I told him, like, we just shot a buck, and come up to us, here's our pin, and once you get up to us, we'll go to the deer. Well, being the amateur that he is, he doesn't take the easiest route and take the road. He decides to come down the bottom and bushwhack his way up to us. I literally told him, come up the road because we're going to have to take the road back anyway. And so we sat there for like 30 minutes waiting for him to show up. And now that he's out of service, like I don't really know. And so I'm thinking like, oh, he's probably following my orders. He's going to come up the road. So I told all of us, it's like, hey, let's just walk down the road. At this point, he's probably on the same road we are on, and we're going to meet him head on, which is fine. We go down that road. We don't run into him. And then we were like, okay, well, maybe he's a little farther out. So we round out, we cross the creek, and now we're on the same face that buck is on. And we come across his tracks.
Wachong's tracks.
Wachong's tracks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is he going up the mountain? I told him to loop around us. And so finally, I start calling, and I get over to the deer, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I texted him. I'm like, come back down the valley. You should see our boot tracks. Just follow our boot tracks. So, long story short, we walk up to where we thought we had shot the buck. You and I actually just completely walked past the deer. The deer was like dead on the side of the road. We just completely blew right past him. And Colin and Jason finally waved us down like, hey, the buck's dead right here. And sure enough, we get over there, and it's just like a little forky. Like, he's not little. He's actually a pretty good forky. He's almost as big as this buck that's sitting next to us, but he's just a forky. He's not forked out like this 4x4 here. And so Colin killed that buck, right? And then, like, after we had basically finished processing that deer, Wachong finally finds us. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, where have you been, man? Are you cold?
This was like 3 hours later.
Yeah. And so I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like worried about him. I was like, I don't know. Like, is he warm? Like, is he safe? I don't know what's going on. Because at this point, because we had a deer down, I had just completely like ditched trying to stay warm. Like, I'm like, I know we have a deer down. We're going to get out of here. We're going to go back to the truck. It's going to be all warm and cozy and whatnot. So, like, you kind of put yourself out in the elements more knowing that you're going to get out of there, right? And so as we're processing the deer, it is still just dumping rain and dumping snow. And so finally we get the deer gathered up. And basically now, well, with Nate, Nate's like, well, I'm going to go home too because we're all too cold and wet to stay. And so I told Colin and Jason, I was like, well, if you guys want the easier hike with the deer, you guys can go with Nate. Like, just go down, take the road down. It's farther hike, but you're just all downhill. You don't have to climb back up the hill that we dropped down in from. So Wachong and I, we were going to hike up back to my truck, which was from up top. And on our way out, we had literally just crested that little ridge because at the beginning we said that you were glassing the left side of the ridge and we were glassing the right side of the ridge. We had come, me and Wachong have come out from the left side, and now we can see the right side. Mm-hmm. Immediately right up top, there's like, I can see 8 deer. And I'm like, Wachong, there's a deer up there because Wachong still had a tag. Mm-hmm. And so my binoculars are all wet. Every time I look up, I can't see anything. It's just all blurry. There's fog and whatnot. And turns out there's a little buck. There's like a little 2x1, like running with those does. And I'm like, do you want to shoot that buck? And Wachong, I remember he looked at the ground because it was like a 350-yard shot. He would have to lay on the ground. And the ground is just running with water. And I don't think he wanted to lay down and shoot it. Yeah. And so he's like, I think I'm going to pass. And so I'm like, all right, if you want to pass, like that's less work for me. Like I just wanted to offer because there is a buck there. I mean, he wasn't big. And so we just, forgot about them. So we made our way up. And then we got up to your bait site. And then from Nate's bait site, you were going to have to weave your way kind of in the brush. And then you would eventually get to this dead-end road that we had parked in on. Mm-hmm. As we're going up there, we jump another buck. And the buck was actually like hopping. And then he actually went and stood broadside. But Wachong was like 20 yards behind me. He was only like a 2x2. And I was like calling Wachong, like, hurry up, get up here. Like, I was like, this is the easiest pack out we're going to get, dude. We'll just drag him to the truck. And he gets up here. He doesn't even see the deer. And then finally he's like, where's the deer? I'm like, dude, the deer's broadside like 50 yards in front of us, dude. Like, it's all white. There's snow everywhere on the ground. There's a brown blob. Look at that brown blob. And by the time he sees it, the buck's already like jumping away. I'm like, whatever, like, we'll just go home. And so we make our way back to the truck. And at this point, there's probably like a good 6 inches of snow up there. We get in the truck, and dude, as we were coming out, my truck was just sliding. Like, I was in 4-wheel drive, everything about it. And that road, as we mentioned, it's sketchy.
It's a high consequence road. Yeah.
Because there was one part of that road where it's super steep and there's some giant ruts. and there's on the left side, which is the upper hillside, there's a bunch of like leaves that have now hung over because all that snow and all that weight has now pushed them onto the road. Where in the morning when there was nothing, like they were like upright.
It's one of those roads where when the snow comes, the road like almost completely disappears because of all the vegetation that folds down over the road.
And so I just told Wachong, I was like, I'm not getting out because it's so tight. I couldn't open my door anyway. So I'm like, we're just going to hopefully follow this rut and kind of slide our way down.
Yeah, it's one of those roads where normally in the summer and stuff when I'm up there and scouting, like you do everything you can to avoid those ruts because they're so deep, even with a Tacoma. But in your guys' scenario, you're just like, man, hit the ruts because it's steep and it's exposed on one side downhill with nothing to catch the truck if you slide, and it curves. So it's like all three things. So it's like it's a steep downhill with a big turn in the road. And so you're just like, if you can just hit the ruts and basically slide down the hill in your skid plate, it'll just keep you in the tracks like a train.
At least that's what you hope for.
That's what you hope for.
There was one section, and this was basically right at that major turn. There's a, I don't know what they call it, but there's like a little berm that they dig out. I don't know if that's from like water just washing out, but then there's no ruts, right? And so that's a spot where your car is kind of just exposed to wherever it's going to go. So we get to that spot, and again, I'm rolling down this road as slow as I can. It's like 2 miles per hour, and I hit that little berm, and I'm trying to turn because you're trying to go left. And as soon as I go to turn my car starts to fishtail. So my rear is going towards the upper end of the road, but my front is now starting to go downhill. And I'm like, I can't stop the truck because it's literally sliding. And I'm like, dude, Wachong, I'm just letting you know if this car goes perpendicular to this road, I cannot turn this car because you can't back up because you're going to hit the berm up top. We can't go downhill because we're going to fall off this cliff. Luckily, I gassed it. And because I gassed it, I was able to slide past that part. And then my left tire hit the rut below that berm. And it turned my car up like forward again. And then we made it back. And I told Sean, I was like, I'm never doing that again. If we have any type of weather, I'm never coming up this road ever again.
Yeah, it's not fun.
So with that hunt out of the way, basically what we're trying to say is it's a fun hunt, but there's so many little things that you have to think about, not just hunting-wise, not just for your personal safety, but also transportation-wise. Because this hunt, we kind of faced it all. We faced hypothermia. We faced potentially getting stuck up there with the truck and just everything you can imagine about a late season hunt.
Yeah, and actually that same basin, because I continued my quest for that deer, and I was joined by one of our buddies, Tanner, and because he still had a deer tag to fill the next couple days after that, and we almost had a repeat for like card for card the exact same hunt where Tanner's a pretty darn tough dude.
Yeah,
I would say he's tougher than I am, and it's the first time kind of being in the medical profession around people that don't look great. It's the first time I was actually pretty concerned for someone's safety. He was so cold. We talked about kind of those stages of hypothermia, being in like the cold state and the warm state, and he actually ended up shooting a deer, and it was just so cold and wet and rainy. It was just the combination of being wet and the cold weather. He started getting like a little foggy and wasn't shivering anymore. Was just kind of sitting there.
He's past that stage.
Yeah, and was like really slow to move, and he ended up warming up on a hike over to go shoot a deer, which is, kind of icing on the cake. But that year, last year, because it's not one of those years, it wasn't what we would consider a harsh winter because we didn't have really heavy snowfall. And overall, we didn't have the temperatures like we normally have during late season of like we can have like those single digit days. But it was a really good example of the range of weather that you get into this hunt, because other states where you're hunting, through November, maybe into the first week of December even, or at least through the last few days of November, you can almost guarantee you're going to get into really cold, really snowy. It's like you just know what to expect. But with Washington season being in this, beginning of the second week to the end of the second week, middle of the third week of November, you can have days that are 60 and sunny
Mm-hmm.
to rainy and 30s to 3 feet of snow and single digits.
Yep.
And you can even have those within the same season, within the same year. And we've had that, right?
Yep.
And so that's just one of those things that you really have to be aware of. Not only, I mean, there's the whole hunting aspect of it, you know, with deer activity and what whitetail are doing during this time and how that weather changes their behavior. But then there's also of how you prepare to hunt and what you need to expect. Because I've started a late season just in like a base layer shirt with like non-insulated pants and no long johns on, and ended it with every single layer I own sitting by a fireplace with sitting by a fire with numb hands and toes. So there's a lot that can change in this late season.
Yeah, and that's the first thing that we want to touch on. It's not even the hunting, it's the safety aspect, because it doesn't matter what you're going to shoot out there if you yourself are not safe.
Yeah.
So the first thing that we want to touch on is obviously you yourself. Staying warm is important, but staying dry is just as important, or maybe even more important than staying warm.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is you have the proper clothes with you. So when it comes to, honestly, any single one of my hunts, a puffy jacket never leaves my pack.
Yeah.
When it comes to late season hunts, I carry 2 puffy jackets. And not only do I carry 2 puffy jackets, but I put them in a dry sack.
Yeah.
So a dry sack, if you don't know what it is, it's basically a waterproof little roll-up bag where if you put like a jacket in there, you roll it up. Even if your pack itself gets wet, you know that whatever contents are inside that dry sack is going to be dry.
Yeah.
And one of the most important things, especially when it comes to these puffy jackets, a lot of them are down. So if they have down insulation, they only work when they're poofy, when they're puffy. If they get wet, that down gets wet and they start clumping up, they start to become pretty ineffective, right? So what I do is I carry a down jacket and a synthetic jacket, because synthetic, it still keeps you warm when it's wet.
Mm-hmm.
So I carry both. So this is why one thing I always tell people too is like, this is when skimping out on clothes isn't going to necessarily do you good, right? So what I do is I've been carrying the Sitka Kelvin down windstopper hoodie. This is a super burly, like kind of just a really thick layer of shell, almost like a water resistant, maybe even almost waterproof type shell, but it's got super heavy insulation in it. And the advantage of that is sometimes if it's light rain, I'll just wear that with no rain jacket because I know the shell can shed layers or shed water. The other one is I either carry a synthetic, which is like a Kuyu Kenai, where if I'm hiking, it breathes better, but it still keeps you warm. I also have a Sitka Kelvin active jacket. I really like that one. Same thing like the Kuyu Kenai, active insulation. But the other one, especially this year for 2025, I've been carrying the First Light Brooks down sweater or jacket, whatever they call it, and then their new First Light.
It's a Chamberlain, right?
Chamberlain. That's a down jacket, and that thing's burly.
Yeah.
And basically, these are really expensive. But I'm just telling you, if you've never been cold and wet out there, it's going to be hard to sell. And I'm not here to sell you a specific piece of clothing. All I'm saying is buy and make sure you have a very heavy-duty down jacket or some type of insulation. That's my point.
For me, it's never been fun to spend a big chunk of cash on boots or on a pack because, like, you know that they benefit you. You know that they're kind of the 2 most important things. I kind of put the down jacket in that same category, and I actually went outside of the hunting industry. I have a RAB, RAB. I think it's a Neutrino Pro. It's their heaviest, basically their heaviest down jacket. And they're more in like the climbing world.
Yep.
But the payoff I've had, like I've felt so vindicated after buying that, using it in these conditions and seeing what a difference it makes. Because although a lot of these hunts are like what you'd classify as like type 2 fun, like not a lot of enjoyment in the moment to moment, like laying in the pouring rain.
Yep.
You still want to go into a hunt knowing that it's something, I mean, it's something we choose to do in our pastime. It's something we choose to do for our enjoyment, for our fulfillment. And a lot of the times, the things that are going to kick you out of the field in the late season are not going to be not seeing deer. It's going to be the elements. It's going to be being cold. It's going to be being wet. It's going to be being just absolutely beyond miserable, where all you want to do is go back to your worm truck.
Exactly.
And so having some of these things with you to help avoid that is not only going to keep you safer, which is the most important, but it's also going to help your success in the field, because these are things that are going to allow you to stay out there.
Yeah, and one point we've made over and over throughout the podcast is the people that stay out there the longest kill the most animals, because they're just exposing themselves to opportunities. So with that said, we're not here to sell you a specific brand or a specific piece of clothing. We're just telling you what we use. There's a lot of good stuff out there, but all we're saying is be prepared, have the right stuff. So this is basically how it breaks down. So when it comes to your base layer, which is like your t-shirt next to skin layer, I like a synthetic layer for late season because it dries faster than merino. And one of the most important things, especially when you're wet out there, is drying fast. So I use a synthetic base layer, and the one I've been using for like the past 6 years is the Sitka Core Lightweight Crew. There's a lot of other layers out there. That's just the one I use. I love it because even when it's wet, as crazy as it sounds, because I was not a believer until I used it, with the technology, when you have your shirt wet, it sucks that moisture onto the outside of your layer, so that when you put that against your skin, you don't have that cold, wet feel. Versus if you have a cotton t-shirt, if that thing's wet, you are feeling every ounce of that moisture on your back.
Yeah.
It matters. And so a base layer, a synthetic base layer. The second layer is usually for me a slightly heavier, base layer type. So like for you use a 250 weight merino hoodie.
Mm-hmm.
I'll use that sometimes, or I'll use like an equivalent but a synthetic layer instead. So like this year, Argali just launched 3 pieces of their own clothing. So they have their grid fleece synthetic hoodie. I really like that one too. But it's not released as of the recording right now. But basically, you're building your layers up. The one after that, I go to an active insulation jacket, which to me, again, is the Sitka Kelvin Active. And so that, for me, I like it like that because especially during those like 20-degree days where you're on the move, it keeps you warm, but you're not sweating. Mm-hmm. So once I have that, then I go to my quote-unquote slightly or my lighter weight puffy jacket. So this is like my First Light Brooks, or, just something that's not as heavily down-filled as a big puffy. For example, like the Stone Glacier Grumman. That's what I was wearing last year. And then on top of that, my big pad puffy is the Sitka Kelvin Down Windstopper, which is discontinued now, or like an equivalent like your Rab Neutrino Pro, or like the First Light Chamberlain, or the Kuiu Super Down Pro. Like those, basically with that will cover pretty much everything that we're most likely going to face here.
Yeah.
And then obviously the last one on top is just a rain jacket of some sort.
Yeah.
This year I'm using the First Light Omen. That thing's pretty sweet. It's a heavy duty one, but man,
you stayed dry.
I really like that one.
Yeah.
There's other ones. There's the Stone Glacier ones. I mean, again, you can do your own research. I think the clothing one, Nate, when we did our 2024 gear review video, the clothing one was my least favorite because it's so like product pushy in a way, and I don't like it because it's like there's so many different pieces out there that will work. Mm-hmm. You just have to find what works for you and what's going to fit your budget. But the most important one that I tell people is buy used or buy on sale.
Yeah.
You can find some of these really good pieces of gear for steep discounts if you buy used.
This is kind of outside of apparel too. Within the hunting industry, maybe this is all industries, but us being in this hunting industry, it's most apparent here where the industry has kind of gotten into this revolving door of new products. Yep. Where even if there's not major changes, a lot of products come out with some sort of yearly or every 2 years update and improvement. And one company does it, so another company does it, and so then they all end up doing it. And that opens the door for a huge market of secondhand.
Yep.
Or clearance or whatever it is. Like you got your big Sitka puffy.
I got all my Sitka stuff on clearance.
Yeah. So it's a good way to do it if you're okay wearing something that's either lightly used or not the newest of the new.
Yep. It's a fad, man. When it comes to like quote unquote technical logical advancement, it's pretty overrated. But with that said, it's like yes, it matters, and there is a very noticeable performance difference from like a $70 Sitka Core Lightweight Crew from like a Walmart Wrangler t-shirt.
Right.
But the point we're making is a 2020 Sitka Core Lightweight Crew to a 2025 Lightweight Crew is marginally different.
Mm-hmm.
They're both going to perform well.
Yeah.
So that's basically the top. The layers on the feet or your legs, we like a merino base layer on that one, and then we buy or we just use a pant of whatever we use. I mean, the pants
We've
just
used everything.
Yeah, just don't use a cotton pant.
Yeah, one thing that all the big hunting brands have them, but if you have the option to wear one that has a reinforced bottom, like a seat, because you find yourself sitting a lot or scooting or sliding or doing whatever it is, if just your seat of your pant is waterproof, it makes a big difference. Because if the first thing you do in the morning is sit down or whatever to tie your boots and it soaks through your butt, and then your butt's going to be wet for the rest of the day.
Exactly.
In addition to the clothing, one thing I want to say, which this doesn't matter what you're wearing, is take the time to take layers off and put layers on. Especially when it's cold out and especially when it's rainy out. If you hike up and you start, for me, I prefer to be warm. I would much rather, like plenty of people will just gut up and start cold and because they know they're going to warm up hiking. I'm too wimpy, I guess.
Me too.
I like to start nice and warm in my truck with my warm layers, and then I would rather stop 2 minutes into the hike or 5 minutes into the hike to take some layers off. One thing I used to make the mistake of doing, and I don't anymore, is once you're warm, especially if you know that you're going to be hiking for a while, and you're starting to sweat, get a layer or two off.
Yep.
Because on those really cold, especially high humidity days, once your layers are soaked with sweat, unless you're starting a fire for a good while, you're not going to dry out. And that is going to just so much decrease your body temperature. So take the time to take your layers off. One of the best clothing purchases that I made was long johns that have the zip off. So what those allow me to do is I can take my long underwear on and off without taking my boots and pants off and my gaiters. Because if I was wearing long johns that did not zip off and I knew in the snow or rain or whatever it was, I was going to have to take my boots off, take my pants off, take my gaiters off to get the long johns off, I wouldn't do it.
Yep.
And then I'd sweat and soak them. And then as far as the day goes, I'd be, for the worse. So just take the time to take, just like for me storing rain gear, I store it in the most accessible pocket in my pack because then I know that it's really easy for me to just take my rain jacket out and put it on. I don't have to sit there and dig through my pack, take everything off. It's kind of the same way we approach filming hunts. If the camera equipment is accessible and easy to use, you're going to use it and you're going to get a better result for it.
Exactly.
So
basically the moral of the story is take care of your body and be cognizant of it. Boots, we like insulated boots. We use 200 grams, but that's because we also hike a lot. And even when we do sit, a lot of times I do start a fire. If we're just overlooking a vantage, I just start a fire because from my experience, a fire doesn't bother animals.
And this is something I know Remy just talked about on one of his more recent podcasts, but being competent with starting a fire in different conditions. And this is something I will be the first to say Samong is significantly better than this at me because he's grown up and just that's been your normal is when you get to somewhere you start a fire even if you don't need to, whereas I grew up starting a fire only where I really need to. And so having proficiency with starting fire and then obviously having the things with you to start a fire and having a backup fire starter that works even if it's wet out, like a flint and steel, or not just having a gas-powered fire starter like a Bic lighter.
Yeah, that's the one thing I want to touch on before we move on from this topic. So when it comes to my fire starting kit, I carry two different lighters. These are your typical Bic or some other equivalent. I always carry two of those, and then I always carry a flint starter. So this is the ones, if you don't know what it is, you have a rod and you have your flint, and when you scrape them together, they make sparks. And then on top of that, I carry, especially in the late season, I carry 10 of those little fire starter cubes. You can buy them at Walmart. They're pretty cheap. Get a yellow box of like 25 of them for like $5 or something. I carry a lot of them, and I always have my fire starting kit in a watertight container of some kind. I don't want it wet, so it's always dry. The other one too is sometimes, like you've mentioned, you put Vaseline of some type, petroleum jelly with some cotton balls, and that's a pretty good fire starting kit because it takes a long time to burn.
Yeah.
The other, sometimes some people use paracord, but I've never had good luck using the quote unquote fire starting paracord. It just doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
The other one I do is I just carry my jet boil, because a lot of times in the late season I use my jet boil to actually like cook ramen and whatnot. On those days where everything's wet, I will just turn up my jet boil's burner and I will just like put sticks on top of it, or like use it as like a fuel canister and let that really burn the core and get the coals going. And then once it's done, I'll start a fire starter and then go from there.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of brand name fire starters out there that aren't cheap, like Pyro Putty. Works great, but it's expensive.
Yep.
There's plenty of great fire options. Our buddy Steve, he takes like paper egg crates, and then we have to have him on sometime to ask him about it. But he fills it with cotton and Vaseline and some of this, some of that, and then he just cuts the crate into each individual egg, and each egg piece is a fire starter. Works incredibly.
Steve's also the other guy that knows how to start fire.
He knows how to start a fire.
Because every time I go camping with him, not necessarily hunting, just camping in general, he always brings out the weirdest fire starting tools I've ever seen. So there's also another one. So you know those Coleman green propane canisters that you can buy pretty much at Walmart and whatnot? Mm-hmm. So if you just go on Amazon, there's actually a little blowtorch, like a fire torch that you can screw directly onto those canisters. Yeah. And you can turn it on and it'll just be a little mini torch. Yeah. You can use it. And Steve's used it many times before.
Yeah,
because you can
kind of start a fire quick.
You can just set the canister with the torch on, just let it kind of blow, and while it's drying some wet wood or whatever, and you don't have to constantly be actively like trying to start a fire. You can go do other stuff while you're doing letting that burn. So that's the one thing that I always carry in the late season that people might overlook. Your fire sometimes can be the difference between your life and your death. So don't skimp over your fire starting kit. And if there's one thing I can tell or say, don't be afraid to quote unquote overpack that one. Because I've hunted with some people where they're like, I can get away with 2 fire starters. You'd be surprised how long it takes to make some of these fires. Sometimes I carry like 8 or 10 of those fire starters. It takes me all of them to get the fire to go. So do not be like, I'm just going to carry 2. Obviously, if it's a super dry day and you just know that it's going to catch like that, it's fine. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about when it's just wet and miserable, humidity is not your friend, and all the wet wood you're gathering is just damp to the core. You know, so it's like that's what we're talking about. So have the right equipment, but not only do you have the right equipment, have the right quantity of equipment as well. Yeah. I carry 2 lighters because I've had lighters fail on me. I carry a flint because it's, like you said, it's not reliant on being wet or cold. You're always going to be able to usually spark something. And then obviously my last one is my jet boil because you just know it's going to have a fire.
Yeah. Another cold weather tip, and this is you'll see it probably in every cold weather hunting video that Smong's ever made, is hot food, specifically top ramen or some sort of broth. On a cold day, bringing your jet boil, just like you were saying, you end up with a little bit heavier pack with some extra puffy layers, some extra fire starter, maybe your jet boil, and some extra food, some extra water, things like that. But even hot water, usually it's just as easy to make either ramen or some broth and put that in a water bottle. And you can even stick that water bottle in inside your puffy to keep it warm for a long time. Drinking hot broth is like an actual treatment for hypothermia. If someone comes in to the hospital super cold, you give them warm IV fluids because it warms your core temperature very well. And so drinking something hot, having some sort of insulated bottle out there, or just having, your jet boil to make some ramen can make a world of difference on those really cold days.
I don't carry a jet boil and eat top ramen or some kind of broth because it warms me up. I just do that because I'm too lazy to pack real food.
Well, do it because it warms you up, guys.
Yeah, so the other thing too is like I also just hate eating cold food. Like when you're out there and it's like 20 degrees and you go to grab like a granola bar, it's like eating a piece of brick because it's frozen.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you go to eat, it's like you're going to break a tooth. And so I just got so tired of that. So I'd rather just, eat something where like, if it's like a pack of Top Ramen, whether it's cold or hot, it's just frozen or like solid. But then I can easily cook that down and make it soft and warm and actually enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
So in the wintertime, I mean, all throughout my videos, like over the years, like you might just see me eating Top Ramen, or sometimes if I'm that lazy, I'll just pack a dehydrated meal of some kind because I just know I don't have to worry about it being like a brick. Like it's always just hot and warm, and it feels like to me when I eat things like that, I feel more rejuvenated than eating like a super cold Cliff Bar or something.
Mm-hmm.
It still gives you energy, but I don't know, you can touch on this too, but I feel like when my body has to digest really cold, hard food, I feel like it doesn't give me as much energy as if I'm just eating something warm right off the bat. Now, is there any truth to that? I don't know. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, I think part of it's the psychological factor of having something warm, and then the other part is, like I was saying, there's really there's a physiologic factor when your body temperature is lower than it normally is, and you are drinking a hot broth or a hot liquid and warm it from the inside.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's a lot of work, but the thing about late season hunting is a lot of times the days are so short. So usually 1 or 2 hot meals, it puts you through the day. At least it does for me. I mean, I'm not going to completely like not bring like granola bars or little snacks. I will, but my main quote unquote course meals are like actual like warm food that you might just pick up from Walmart or something.
Yeah. Another one for those cold days, and this is more specifically for those just like deep winter, cold, dry days. And this is actually something that Tanner and I used this last October on our Oregon mule deer hunt, because we had some mornings that were, well, we didn't have a thermometer with us, but it was low teens or high single digits. It was really cold, but it was sunny and just bone dry. We packed up our sleeping bags from camp and took them up to our glassing knob. And there's sleeping bags out there. There's like the Peaks Solace, I think, which has armholes. And there's the Sitka has a sleeping bag with armholes. But if you're able to have just an extra layer of down from like a sleeping bag, if it's dry out, to throw over your legs in the lower half of your core, it makes a huge difference. It's like puffy pants on steroids. It's just a great.
Yeah, I think for the most part, if you have the clothing list that we laid out plus a puffy pant, usually you're fine. Like usually the coldest part for me is my feet.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you sit down, like we're not, wearing 1,000-gram insulated boots. So if you have a blanket, so one thing I've actually done is I've gone on Amazon and I just searched up like lightweight down blankets, and these are probably like, I don't know, 6 by 4 feet long and wide. And to just have something like that, and it might not be like the heaviest insulated, but when you're sitting down, if you just have that over your legs and over your feet, it goes a long ways.
Oh, a lot. Yeah.
And so I've actually been thinking about buying one from Amazon for cheap, and just packing it in the pack, and when you sit down like that, just throw it over your feet.
Yeah, and speaking to your feet being cold, especially if you're doing either uninsulated boots or lighter boots like we are, a lot of times, especially if you're hiking and you're lacing up your boots really tight, that's great. It helps prevent blisters. It gives you better traction stuff. But once you get to where you're going, if you're anticipating just kind of plopping down somewhere and glassing, or even if you're moving, loosen up your boots a little bit, because what happens when you, especially with like leather boots, when you cinch them down, you decrease circulation to your feet, and circulation obviously is what's keeping your feet warm.
Yeah, blood circulation.
Yep. So loosen your boots up, or even just untying them after you get up to your spot for a bit and letting the blood circulation really get to your feet again makes a world of difference.
Exactly. Moving on, another one I want to touch on is outside of the body, you yourself is your vehicle. Okay, like we know how to stay warm outside, having the fire kit. But the other one is what happens when you're trying to get to your spot or trying to go home. And this is another one I feel like people don't put enough emphasis in. I'm part of that. I used to be like that all the time, where you just think that your truck is always going to be fine and you just have to focus on yourself, which, it is true. You yourself are the most important. But when it comes to your trucks, especially during these late season hunts where you just don't really know what the weather is going to bring. Like, I mean, we touched on the story where my truck was literally about to slide off the side of this mountain. Mm-hmm. Chains. Make sure your car or your truck, whatever vehicle you're driving, you have chains for it. And don't just have a pair of two for either the front or the back. Have a full set of chains for all four wheels. Because, for example, like in my situation, right? If I was to get stuck in that situation and I only had two chains at the front, those two wheels on the front are useless. And you would have to then go and put it on the back. But in those situations, it's like every wheel matters because, you know, your car is almost like half and half at that point. Chains are really important. I'm guilty of it because I've been borrowing Nate's chains for like the past 2 years. And the problem with that is last year when before Nate got his new set of tires, his tires were the stock size. Mine, I had upgraded to a slightly bigger tire. And so your tires or your chains actually didn't even really fit my wheels.
You could limp it along, but...
Yeah, but it's not really right. Something. Because, I mean, we had actually come up this driveway, and I was towing this giant U-Haul trailer to bring my mounts into the shop. And there was about a foot of snow up the driveway. And Nate has a pretty... It's not steep, but when you have a foot of snow on the ground, it's pretty steep. Yeah. Especially when you're towing a trailer, too. And we had come up, and I was about to make it up the top, and I started spinning out. So luckily, I mean, the shop's right here. So we put Nate's chains on. And I had gone just far enough to, you know, be able to get myself off that hill, and the chains had come off, like they popped off. So don't be like me and borrow your buddy's chains that do not fit your actual tires on your truck or vehicle. Yeah. So have 4 sets of those. The other one is a shovel. Yep. Have a shovel. And when I say shovel, don't bring the cheap, flimsy plastic ones. Use the heavy-duty metal ones because here's the problem. So a lot of times when you're at home, you have a plastic shovel because it's really light for you to shovel.
You're talking like a snow shovel.
Snow shovel.
Yeah.
Those are light, but when you're out there, the problem with those plastics is, let's just be honest, plastic's not strong like metal. And when you're out there, sometimes what you have to do, and we've done this in the past, is you're not digging snow. You're trying to break ice. And that piece of plastic shovel sometimes is the one that breaks, not the ice. Yeah. And so in the past, especially when you have segregated winter storms where like you'll have like a snowstorm come first and then it starts to melt out, but then it freezes and it's ice. So you have ice on the bottom, you have a layer of snow on top because the second storm rolled through. You can shovel that top snow off, but once you get to that black ice essentially, now you got to break that ice.
Yeah, that, and as well as if you're trying to get out of a sticky situation, you can use an actual shovel to shovel dirt or sand under your tires for more
dig
traction.
Some gravel out. And that's one thing we've done too. Sometimes we've broken through the ice and then we literally broke a bunch of gravel, threw it on the snow in front of our tires to help gain traction, and it's helped. Okay. So yes, it doesn't hurt to have a plastic shovel for sure. But if you're going to bring a plastic shovel, just make sure that that's not the first one. That should be a secondary one. Yeah. So a hard metal shovel is more important than your plastic shovel. Have that at your car's defense.
Yeah, and then another thing, this is more for pickup truck guys, and any guy that drives a pickup truck, I'm sure knows this or has experience with this, but they are really not great vehicles in the snow because, you have four-wheel drive, so you have weight up in the front under your two front, but the back end, the back half or more than half, back 2/3 of your vehicle is really lightweight, and so you have really poor traction back there, which is why you end up a lot of times kind of in these fishtail situations where the back end slides off the road. So one thing I usually do if I am expecting any sort of hunt is I'll load up at my house is a whole bunch of rocks or boulders. I also have a bunch of like 100-pound sandbags, and I'll load up 400 or 500 extra pounds of weight over the rear wheels in my truck, and giving a little bit of extra weight helps tremendously in snowy and icy situations.
Another one that I think is very important that we should all have is some type of truck starter or car starter. So we all know of jump starting, where you pull up to another car with another car and you attach the wires and start that way. But when you're out there alone and you don't have another car to help, nowadays you have these independent truck starters.
It's a battery pack.
Like a battery pack, and you can plug it into your car as normal. but then that's what's going to power or jumpstart your truck. And this is especially crucial for some of the older trucks where it might not be as reliable, right? Like Dan and I, we drive two relatively newer trucks, like in the past 4-year type trucks. We haven't had issues with, the engine starting, but at some point it's going to probably give out.
Yeah,
right?
and you don't have battery problems all year until you go out into the really cold weather and it zaps your battery
Yep.
because it's the first bit of winter.
Yeah, so I forgot the exact brand of the battery that I carry, but it's off of Amazon. I bought it for like $250, and it's pretty small, right? But before I head out, I always make sure it's fully charged. And then in the Tacoma, there's like these little compartments in the back seat that you can just kind of tuck it in. And so that's where I keep mine. I haven't had to use it. Very fortunately that I haven't had to use it, but I don't want to ever have to use it.
I have used it,
but
they work great.
Yeah, but it's like the point is like you just want to be prepared for those situations. Like, 'cause for example, like when Chong and I were trying to drive out after Colin's hunt, like what if I couldn't get my truck to start, right? Because here's the thing, we'd be like, oh yeah, just drive up there. I don't think another truck would have made it up there. I was having trouble just going down. Like imagine you having to drive up that road with 6 inches of snow. There's probably no other car. It would have just been like, I leave my truck up there. I hope the snow melts in a few days and I'll come back and get my truck type of deal.
Yeah.
So you always want to be independent. Don't always rely or think that another vehicle can get to your vehicle where you parked it, because it's not always the case. Another thing that you should have is some type of tow rope. So this year I got this rope. It's called Spartan Rope. So Spartan Rope, they're a company based out of the west side of Washington. And I really like them because with how they have designed their tow ropes, it's stretchy. So what that allows for is if you took a very generic Harbor Freight strap, there's no stretch, right? So the problem with that is like when you attach the tow rope to my truck, let's say my truck's pulling out your truck and your truck is stuck in a ditch or whatever. Those no stretch ones, when I go, it's like slack, 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 and then boom, there's a really sharp tension on it. That can often break the tow rope. With the Spartan rope, because it stretches, there's a gradual stretching of the rope until it finally hits the maximum stretch, and then you have a very gentle pull of whatever vehicle's stuck.
Yep.
And so I think it's a better one, because I mean I hear nightmare stories of people like, oh yeah, I was revving and then tow rope just snapped.
Yeah.
And the Spartan rope, it's really burly too. It's huge. It's almost like the big. Like I probably can't even wrap my hands around it. And it's extremely strong. And so I recommend it. And it's expensive, but I think that again, when it comes to these safety things, you can't really put a price on it.
Yeah, and just a mention of note with situations of towing people out, absolutely never attach the tow rope to your ball and hitch on your truck.
Terrible.
It is one of the most dangerous things that you can do. You tow out, like you said, you get this sharp increase in tension, and the ball or the hitch will break off and go shooting at really fast speeds through the rear window or through the front window of the truck that's towing it out. People die every couple years from this. I have a family friend who he lost his sister doing this. So it's a really dangerous thing. So if you're towing someone out, attach it to the actual frame part of the hitch underneath the truck, attach it to an actual welded piece of the frame. A lot of trucks and vehicles have tow loop eyes or tow eyes on the front. So do that. Do not wrap it around the ball.
And if you don't know where your tow attachments are on your vehicle, go learn it.
Yeah.
Because the hitch, for whatever reason, it always seems to be people's first go-to is put it on the hitch.
Yeah.
But the hitch is not for towing or pulling out. It's to tow like a trailer. That's what it's designed for.
Yeah, much lower forces.
Yeah, because so last year, Chong was driving up his little Mazda, right? And he actually had gone up hunting by himself, and he actually made his way up. I mean, a Mazda, it's a little sedan, so it's like you're really low on the road. And he was kind of like, maneuvering his way up. But on his way back, he had come across this little berm on the road. I mean, this is like general deer season, no snow on the ground. And instead of going left, how he should have done, how he came up, he went to the right, and there was just enough of like a little concave where he got high centered, and he couldn't get out. And so luckily for him, he had service for whatever reason in that spot. He hit me up. He's like 3 hours away, and this is Thursday before the second weekend. So I was gonna end up there on Friday night anyway. And he called me. He's like, "Dude, SOS, I need your help." And I'm like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "I'm stuck." And I'm like, "What the heck, dude? Like, are you serious?" So I drive 3 hours up there, and I just told him, I was like, "All right, just make sure that your your car has attachment points for me to actually attach the tow." And he's like, "I have no idea what that is." And I'm like, "I can't pull you out if I can't actually put my tow strap on your car." Because I was like, "There should be tow straps." And he's like, "I can't see." I was like, "What do you mean you can't see?" He's like, the car is too low. I can't see. And so that's the other thing too, is like sometimes the car is stuck in a position where you can't actually like dig underneath to hook it up. Luckily for him, there was enough of a room that he had this frame that had the hoops. And so I drove up there. I towed him out, or I pulled him out. It was only like 2 feet that I needed to pull him out. And we got through it. Right. And so it's just like, it sounds so funny, but it's like when you actually are in those predicaments, dude, that's not a fun feeling, man.
No, and these are, like, I know this is not hunting specific, but these are all things that can ruin your hunt. And I mean, we actually, I feel like we talk about safety and stuff on this podcast quite a bit, but these are the things that go from you thinking about animals to you thinking about like you could care less about the hunt.
Exactly.
Less about the white-tailed deer, less about the rut, less about the biggest buck of your life, because all that you can think about is your safety and getting out of there.
Yep.
So just do your best to avoid these situations. And why we're talking about this at this time of the year in kind of the relation to late season whitetail is because it's such a volatile season with weather, and it can change so fast.
Yeah, because dude, I have a lot of stories of people just getting stuck. Like my brother, the first time I actually experienced something like this was my brother. We were turkey hunting, and this was like what 2010 or something, and we had like 6 feet of snow. And sometimes it's just your judgment, right? So my brother's trying to turn on this road to like basically U-turn, and he had come, and his car's like the truck is like starting to like go into the ditch, and instead of just backing up and then going, he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna turn." Well, as he's trying to get back up on the road, he goes even further in the ditch, and the car just gets stuck, and that ruined our hunt because the rest of the day we just spent trying to find help. Yeah. And so we used the other truck. Luckily, we had like 4 trucks on that trip. We drove out to the guy that lived at the road, and he had a bunch of spare tow ropes. We didn't even have any of that stuff. And so we brought it back, and we had like 3 trucks pulling this truck in 3 different directions without trying to get the other trucks just get stuck either, you know? And so it sounds funny, but trust me, it doesn't matter what hunt you're doing, when your truck is stuck and you can't get out, it doesn't matter anything else. It's just now this is what you're focused on. And trust me, when you're out there, you don't want to be pulling your truck out. Yeah. So the moral of that story is use your best judgment. Don't be lazy. Back up a little bit and then get on the road, right? So most of these things you can avoid by just not taking the easy way out. Yeah. It starts with you. So with that said, the last one we're going to wrap it up with is just have a SOS device of some kind. We've touched on it many times before. We use a Zoleo. It's a satellite phone, or it's a satellite device that we connect to our phone, and we don't need service to be able to communicate to our loved ones at homes, or even worst case scenario, SOS. Always have that and make sure it's always plugged in, or make sure it's charged. Yeah.
It's just kind of doing all those little 1% things that have a potential to be a big impact on your hunt.
Exactly. So with that said, folks, we're approaching November, which, again, this is probably one of the most dangerous times to be out in the woods. We want you to be prepared for it. We want you to enjoy a hunt. We want you to not have to worry about pulling out of the truck or worry about your own safety. Safety and your well-being comes well before your hunt, because I've been out there many times where I'm just cold, wet, and miserable, and I just want to be at home. So with that said, we're going to wrap it up and go to fast facts.
Let's do it. So here is my fast fact for you. Onyx, shout out to Onyx, was founded in 2009 with the release of their original Onyx chip Now, a lot of people that are newer into hunting know Onyx and Go Hunt and all, these Spartan Forge and these online mapping softwares as apps like Google Maps or Google Earth, where you open up and you just can scroll around and you get all the information. Their original product was the Onyx chip, which was a state-by-state chip. You bought the state. So for us, we would have bought the Washington chip that you plug into your Garmin GPS, and that would pop up not all the information that Onyx has today, but it would pop up your private land and your public land and your boundaries and your property owner information. And so it was just something cool. I was looking back at Onyx and kind of reading the founder's story and stuff, and I have a really distinct memory of one of my first hunts as a kid with my dad. We were turkey hunting, and my dad had his Garmin with the Washington Onyx chip in it.
Yep.
And we were going through public land, and we just got in the thickest of thick brambles. I mean, it was like when you're kind of in that alder stuff and you can't move. And my dad pulls out his GPS, and this was also in the pretty early days of GPS. And he's like, yeah, like there's a road like 15 feet in front of us. I was like, no way. Like, he's like, no, like the Onyx says that. Onyx says there's a road right there. And so we keep just bushwhacking through and like break out and step down onto this road. And it was one of the earliest things I remember with having Onyx on a GPS and stuff. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, the first thing I ever did with Onyx was I bought a chip too, and I had a Garmin Rhino 750 or something like that in 2017.
Yep.
And it was a good one, but the problem with the Garmin's or those devices is they don't show satellite imagery. It's all topography.
Right.
And so you don't actually know if it's thick or a clear cut or anything. You just see road, and this is where I am.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you go through the nastiest, thickest stuff just to get to a road.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why on Onyx nowadays I just use my phone because you can toggle between topography and hybrid mode and satellite imagery and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's funny. But yeah, Onyx has come a long way, and we love it. With that said, mine's about a little animal that we've come to be very fond of. So, pikas.
I was gonna guess pikas. That's great.
Pikas. So, if you don't know what a pika is, they're this really small mouse-like animal, more like a rabbit in a way, like a really small rabbit in a way.
Yeah.
But don't have big ears like rabbits. But we run into them every year, especially in the high country, and they're really cute. But basically what they do is like when they see danger, they make this really high-pitched like ee sound.
Yeah, it's like a little scream.
So that's like their little alarm bark, right? So the more a pika feels threatened, the higher the frequency of those little eats or whatever they call it, those little meeps get, those chirps. So they'll do a faster cadence the closer they feel like danger is getting to them. But the most unique thing that I found about this is actually that pikas that live within a vicinity of, a basin, whatever. To us, they all sound the same. But every individual pika can distinguish a pika from another pika just by their call.
Really?
So it's kind of like...
It's like us understanding voices.
Voices, which I think that's just so fascinating because as a human, it just sounds like the same exact thing. But pikas know exactly who lives in that basin, and they know exactly which pika is sounding off the alarm when there's a danger.
I love pikas.
Pikas, we love Pikachus, man, but pikas are awesome too. So that's just a little fast fact about pikas because I didn't even know they were called pikas until that one year when Nate killed Jessica, and Nate's like, "Oh, that's a pika,
a bear."
Yeah, kill the bear. Jessica the bear. That is specify, not Jessica a person, Jessica the bear. And there were pikas all around us, and we were getting them in 4K. So with that said, folks, we really appreciate you guys tuning in to this week. I know it's not like a specific hunt or a tactic, but we just feel like it's something important because every single year, man, something and someone, they fall victim to not being prepared for the elements when they head out there.
For sure.
And so we don't want those stories. We want to minimize that stuff and just wanted to give our thoughts on some of the things that you can do to prevent putting yourself in harm's way.
Absolutely. That's it for this week, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.
That's right.